Hello and welcome to your weekly, your twin flame insights for right now, recorded every week for you, but applicable for your right now. So hello. Lots and lots and lots to share. So please do check out my other kind of info videos because there's some stuff that doesn't necessarily come through here. And I'm going to be offering something in the new year. So please keep an eye out for that. We've really got to get a hold of what's going on online and start to make an impact and get together. Really get a hold of collective consciousness as a collective, which is what we are, and start to have some fun here. Got a lot of fun to have. So yes, I know some people do prefer the red thread, so to speak, the red cloth. Sometimes it's easier for me to record that way. Sometimes it's easier for me to record this way. That's the way it goes. Just going to wait for these cards to shuffle, Tower of the New Vision, and then see what we have for right now. Ooh, what's going on? Okay, so bottom of the deck is Queen of Swords. I've got the light on quite brightly, so that's probably maybe reflecting a little bit too much. 1 second, let me just turn that down. There we go, that's a bit better. This is the Queen of Swords, and this is really representing, really getting very clear cut with, I mean, honestly, people really getting, and you're probably experiencing this, that there's a lot of clarity around what works and what doesn't work around and in the narrative around people. And this is only for right now. So this isn't about making a judgment. The Queen of Swords is clean and strict and sharp, but she isn't about it. It is not about judgment. So to say that something isn't working with a very hard no is 100% possible without judgment. You might notice that other people will project judgment onto you and say, well, you're judging, that's why you're saying no. That as a concept is completely ridiculous, because essentially life is made of opposites. This is what this whole story is about, this masculine, feminine, yes and no, this and that, together, apart, all these opposites and the opposition. So no is part of that. As part of that wholeness and neutrality. So don't be afraid of being very, very polarized with your yeses and your nos. And this Queen is speaking of no's. So it's speaking of discernment. Get out of the way of things that are wrong, okay? And there's a very, very important message here. What is right and wrong to you is not about right and wrong in anything outside of you. You are the universe. You are your universe. Your universe is the universe from your perspective, as far as your consciousness is concerned, which is all you have to experience through. So this isn't about agreement. This can cause potentially disagreement, because there'll be lots of things, people, ideas that you will be very vehemently against. This is what this Queen is speaking to. But all that is important is that you understand and you communicate the reality of that from a non-judgmental position, because it has to be non-judgmental for you. Otherwise, it will just get sticky and cause you problems. So you don't want, if there's any part of you that feels wrong, so to speak, guilty or shameful in your nose, then they won't be clean, and in a sense, you know, that it won't be a clean cut, and it will cause problems. Within this kind of relationship framework, it's really speaking to this invitation to be very aware of what is not working for you, and potentially in a kind of very broad stroke, as in, this doesn't work for me, this whole group doesn't work for me, this country doesn't work for me, you know, whatever, like, and it's always right now, because in an hour's time or a day's time or a year's time or 20 years time or 2 seconds time, you can completely change your mind. That's why you can never really attach to a yes or a no, because it's going to change. The only constant is change. So it's speaking of a very big decision or a big no, and that is quite far reaching. It's going to feel off to you if you are applying judgments or allowing other people to apply judgments to your no's. And this queen is, you know, she looks pretty stern. And actually, in these cards, she's a pretty stern figure. Let's see if we can. She's quite stern. Her face is very stern, and she's saying no. What's she got around her wrist there? It's like a kind of interesting. You know, I mentioned the red thread. What's she got around her wrist? Some sort of red thread. So, you know, this is kind of reminding me of this kind of like Kabbalah stuff, and there's a huge amount of Christ consciousness, which I feel is very interrelated with these kind of, you know, Abrahamic rooted religions, which is, you know, kind of like the Judaism, the Islam, the Christianity. They all came from, you know, said, well, everything came from the same stories, really, honestly. It all goes down to masculine and feminine, which is what this is all about. But it's this interconnectedness, right? It's speaking of interconnectedness. If you are maintaining your interconnectedness, you are free to say this, not this, not this, not this. It's not in a leadership way. It's not, I am here to tell everybody how to live and that this is wrong. There is no blanket wrong for everybody. There is blanket wrong for you, though, here. So it's really inviting you to completely embody and get a hold of this as a concept, that you are completely free to say, this does not work for me. And you can communicate that. But the most effective way to communicate that is to not need anybody else to agree with you. And, you know, this can also manifest outside of you, though it does feel like it's more within you at this time. But it also is reflected in the mirror of the twin flame situation, where they say, no, this isn't happening. And then there's an attachment to that. So you've got to remember that the only constant is change. There's been times where, you know, in twin flame relationships, somebody's been in a relationship with somebody else, or they've come into a relationship with somebody else. And I always remind those, and people can have these kind of negative responses to that. And I always remind people that quite often twin flames can meet in that situation and have the most incredible connection experience. So this isn't about anybody else's relationships. Has nothing to do with your relationships. Anybody else's opinions, nothing to do with your opinions. That doesn't mean you disrespect the wishes of anybody that you are interacting with. If somebody says to you, I'm in a relationship with somebody else, and that means that I don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. Like you don't go, you can say, well, this is what I want, but you have to listen to that perspective, right? If you want people to listen to your perspectives, you have to listen to their perspective. This goes back to this whole conflict thing and just really holding each other's perspectives. The true perfect wholeness of masculine and feminine interaction is the holding of each other's perspectives into one. It's not about agreement. It's about understanding. Agreement and understanding are different things. And understanding is the key to twin flame relationship, unconditional love relationship, all relationship that it has good communication. And this is really how we create and manifest good relationship on earth here. So Queen of Swords is saying, be really aware and discerning about what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and go with it. And it's also saying there's going to be a really strong, this whole reading is kind of like very strong, very strict. It's basically saying, this is how it is, you know? The energy is very present. Okay. Woo. Okay, so our 3 cards in the middle for this week, King of Cups, the World, and the 5 of Swords. So there's that conflict piece. Oh, I love this light. I know maybe it's not so great for seeing the cards, but This is not what this one is about. Okay, King of Cups. I love this Tower of the New Vision because we see the backside of the card. So, and you can see what's going on. So this King of Cups is a really fascinating card. He has these weapons behind his back. This is a very constant energy at the moment. This is to do with the coming to the forefront of the masculine, the divine masculine energy, as we can call it. So there's a defensiveness that's in this King of Cups. It's an invitation to really understand that a lot of masculine, I'm going to say divine masculine. First, I need to qualify the terms. So masculine and feminine is masculine and feminine are masculine and feminine, and these are, we can understand these. Okay, divine masculine and divine feminine is, for me in this space, a kind of elevated growth point, higher consciousness. It's a higher consciousness manifested and embodied in those masculine and feminine energies. So the divine masculine is an embodied, manifested Christ consciousness. Really, you want to think about it as a Christ consciousness manifested human, embodied, whole, kind of like a bodhisattva, you know, kind of energy. This is an elevated, awakened human, right? It's human, very, very human. Okay, so this is speaking to this divine masculine energy. For obvious reasons, understanding the stories around the divine masculine over time, the divine masculine is feeling defensive. Is feeling as though, even though he has all the capacity to flow unconditional love from his heart, and this is kind of who he is. Let's move this down a bit. Which is kind of like here in this King of Cups, he's defensive, and for good reason. Look at this big wave coming and this huge ship coming. He sees things that others do not necessarily see. When we're looking at the King of Cups from this kind of front on perspective, we don't see what he's seeing. And we don't see what's behind him, which is these weapons, this defensiveness. But he is a protector. If there is a no that comes from that divine masculine energy, it is to protect whoever is getting the no from whatever he is perceiving as a threat. And you must trust. If you trust the divine masculine energy and you trust it to manifest, and you must trust it to be channeled and embodied in a human form, then you have to listen to what it says. And that, I really can't say any clearer than that, because I know you get it. Okay, then this world again is in the middle. I feel like there's so much repeat over these cards. I don't know why they're repeating. They just are. Wholeness, balance, the same energies. Do you know what this is telling me? There's a bit of a stagnation, and I know this. There's a bit of a stagnation in the community here. And what you've got to understand is the community isn't just you and the people that are watching these videos. The community is so much bigger than that. So you might be kind of like getting it, but what it's speaking to, because this is very important it's very important that you understand that the collective impact. The collective is not getting it. And I don't mean kind of like the world. I mean those that what we can call, you know, I'm now calling like authentic twin flames, light, whatever you want to call yourself, light worker, you know, anyone interested in this is the divine feminine, divine masculine energy, however it's manifesting, however it's kind of moving through you, the bodhisattva. Okay, that's what I really want to call it, the enlightened, embodied. I love that there's the word body in bodhisattva, right? Even though it's not necessarily, it's the same sounds. This is what this world is speaking to. This wholeness, this completedness, this elevatedness in a grounded way, you know, with the four winds all around it, the north, south, east, west, the four elements, all these, this understanding, okay? And what just came to my mind, and I'm going to share it, is the Queen Victoria here in the UK in London. She built a monument to King Consort Albert when he died, and there is a huge monument to him, gilded gold, at the edge of Hyde Park, opposite the Royal Albert Hall, which is the kind of venue that she built, entertainment kind of like venue built in his honor as well. And it has the four corners of what was then like the British Empire on it. But it's interesting because I'm sure there's like some sort of buffalo on it or something like that, and it seems it's this elevated divine masculine, because he also sits on this plinth in this chair. There's so many crossovers with this, and it's really speaking of this kind of divine love, this divine togetherness, and wanting you to understand, and this is something that I've been channeling, that there have been these kind of like twin flame relationships over time, and they have been very powerful, and they're not necessarily quote unquote spiritual relationships, because the intersecting of these energies are can happen anywhere and in any kind of frequency. So I'm not saying, well, I kind of am saying that these two potentially had something similar, but it's very important to understand that this kind of whole idea of being an enlightened being, so to speak, doesn't mean you're any less human. It doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. There's a huge amount of judgment that gets projected from others onto spiritual leaders that are just like them. In general, people want their leaders to be better than them in their mind so that they can listen to them, because we're not very good at understanding and listening on equal terms. Okay. So this is when we get into trouble, and we get into this kind of like narcissistic personalities that are leading spiritual kind of cults and things like that, because in general, we find it challenging to listen to somebody unless they make themselves more than us. In reality, and what is quite useful about royalty is that there is this connection and this belief around the divine right of kings, that they are put in their place by God, and how could they not be? We are all put where we are by God. But also this idea of service. What's very interesting about also the late Queen Elizabeth II here is that, and all good leaders understand, and the good thing about this kind of like non-democratic, we could say, as in it's decided by God who should rule, not by the people, because essentially that is the idea around royalty. The good thing about that is whichever personalities manifest there are the personalities. And yes, you might get some dictatorial, narcissistic personalities because they can feed off this kind of power that they have. But it doesn't come from the ground up, so to speak. It doesn't attract those types of personalities because the deciding comes from fate or chance. So this idea of service has to be at the core of leadership. And so that aspect of leadership must be in service. And this is why, if you want to lead anything in a genuinely powerful, spiritual, divine way, you must be doing it in service. You cannot understand service if you do not understand interconnectedness. You cannot serve all if you do not know what all is. Honestly, and this is not an ego projection of what all is, which is why this work and where you are right now is the most important place for you to be. This is what this is speaking to. This idea of service, not in an egotistical way, not I'm a good person because I serve. It's that service is my job. Service is my job because of who I am. And you're doing this anyway, but bringing it to consciousness is going to make all the difference. Because you should be on a gilded throne. You are a queen. You are a king. You are royal. This must be reconnected. We must reconnect divinity with royalty. And that royalty has to be claimed because you have to know who you are. This is very, very important. Then this Five of Swords comes up though. There's a lot of conflict around that. There's a lot of kind of like issue. This is kind of burnt out, stuff. This is just speaking to the issues in the world right now, which you can find at any point. War, destruction, and that can be on the micro or the macro. You can see it. You can find it. You want to look for it, you will find it. That doesn't take away from the wholeness of the divinity. It's not about this reaching this perfect world where nothing negative happens, though. Just focus on what lights you up and makes you feel good. But this isn't the point. The point is not to reach some sort of perfection, because then what that creates is a huge shadow, because the negative aspects are being ignored. And so it's very important that we allow leadership and hierarchy, honestly, to exist in an egalitarian way. It's just our role. So if you are meant to be in a position of leadership, but because you feel like everybody is equal, that is trumping your destiny, because you don't think that, because your mind doesn't believe that those two things can exist simultaneously, you are going to stop yourself from really being who you really are. And if you want to see me one-to-one, I'm going to open up some sessions in the next couple of weeks as part of this new collective coming together to just kind of get an idea. And people call it Akashic or whatever, but it was just coming to me, going through my mind last night, literally, that there's the gift that I have is to really know who you are in your divinity. And this is what this twin flame thing's always been about. Who are you in your divinity? Who are you in your Christ consciousness? Who are you? Because this is a manifested real human thing. It's not, I have to reach some level of perfection. You already are that. You were born that. You were born perfect. So it's about remembering, allowing that nucleus that you were born with to really manifest in a very physical, practical way, so that you can really be your divine self in the world. This is what I have the capacity to channel for you. In real practical terms, this is who you are. This is the work that was started right when I started this channel 9 years ago, I think, or I don't even know how many years it is. But it's really returning. Now we're really at a place of return. And really we want to embrace this as part of wholeness, that we don't need to be afraid of negativity and destruction. It really is part of the divine feminine, divine masculine manifestation on earth. It's very important that it is embraced. Okay. And then the last card is this Nine of Swords. It's really, oh my gosh, look at that little goblin there. Oh, whoops. So, woo, okay. It's just doubling down on this idea. Lots of swords here. Doubling down on this idea that if you try to work it out yourself, you will fail, so to speak, or it will feel overwhelming. There's this kind of like idea of evil that is really present in this card. And honestly, I work with someone who was so obsessed because of her childhood experiences with the presence of evil that she was unwilling to allow it to integrate into the wholeness of things. And so she was always fighting against evil, and whenever we fight, get stronger. It's just in our consciousness. If we are riled up about something, it just kind of permeates our consciousness and kind of becomes our being, and we start to behave in these ways that are narcissistic, and because they shut down anybody else's opinion. So it's really inviting you to not be afraid of evil or negative forces, because they are part of the experience of wholeness. And also to not be afraid of that within yourself, but also to not be afraid of that within spiritual teachers and leaders, and not just within spirituality, but everywhere. There was a lovely image that I found recently on the internet, supposedly a Native American, because who knows where it came from. I didn't check it out, but a Native American proverb or saying that you should beware leaders that care more about power than they do about people. And this really is, it just blew my mind, and I'm going to use this in all of my work to help people to anybody to make decisions about who they are investing in your life, especially in positions of leadership. Do they care more about power, or do they care more about people? And be very aware, discerning, and clear about who those people are, because a lot of people will pretend they care about people. You have to be able to know, because I feel like it's this kind of is saying that we can't let the shadows, we can't just dissociate and cut off and avoid and let this kind of like evil and bad stuff go into the shadow and just pretend it isn't there. But we also can't focus on it and fight against it, because it's not about fighting it, it's about addressing it and embracing it. Really, the best way to understand how to deal with evil or darkness or any of that stuff is to meet it with your light. Because if you are a light and you take a light into darkness, the darkness dissipates. So the way to fight against darkness or evil is really to bring more of the opposite to it, because life is just about balance. If it seems like there's a lot of evil or darkness around, it just means that things are out of balance. So all you need to do is counterbalance it with something else. That's how, and bring it back into balance. It's not about trying to eradicate anything. To say it's just a balance. And sometimes, true awakening or neutrality, so to speak, is that 99% evil and 1% good is still balanced, because all that matters is this 100, right? But our experience is going to be different of the spectrum. Really, 100% and 0 is still 100, okay? But really, we want movement, so we get the full breadth of experience, if that makes sense. So you have to be able to embrace every single proportion of kind of like good to evil. And again, you can really kind of do this with all opposites: good, bad, masculine, feminine, togetherness, separation, uniting, separation, love, fear, anything. It's just to be able to play with those concepts in a balanced way. This is genuinely what creates this. The kind of basic as well message around this Nine of Swords is that if you allow too many of your literally personal thoughts to build up into a story that nobody else kind of like gets or agrees with, it's gonna feel like it's gonna kind of like turn in onto you. When you're on this path, you don't get to lead an egotistical life, as in you're just really allowing your thoughts to be all reality, without a connectedness to your heart and soul. Your soul really has to be present. Your destiny, your divine feminine Christ consciousness, divine masculine Christ consciousness has to really be present in your very beingness. Then when that is connected up with your thinking is operating, your thinking and your speech and your beingness is working for that energy, if that makes sense. So it's not the thoughts are bad or thinking is wrong and unspiritual. It's that it needs to be connected up to your soul, so to speak, who you really are, so to speak, the authentic self. If it is not, then and if we are just believing those thoughts, and once it gets into this 9 territory, it just means that there's a lot of like stacked up beliefs that essentially are attachments. So attachments is just like a belief that we hold on to, something that we hold on to and we are not questioning. So essentially, to live an egotistical life is to believe everything is true, and that the equal and opposite is not also true, because that can be challenging. But that's when you find out who you are. If you are just, this is me, but if anyone challenges me, then I have an issue with that, then that's not really you. Because if you are authentically you, then anything that challenges the equal and opposite of whatever you believe is also you, because one cannot exist without the other, which is, as you'll understand, part of the perfect manifestation of what we call twin flame relationships. So I know you get it. I know you heard it. We speak a little bit between the lines in this space. So I'm always sensing whoever's watching and what you're getting and whether you've got it, because it's not necessarily about the words, and I know you know that. Okay, I'm going to do one more. We're not going to do a roomie this week. What are we going to do? Do one more card. Just feel like there's one more card. Okay. Here we are. Oh, interesting. Wow. Nine of Cups. So the Nine of Cups is this, I always call it the genie card. On the other side, you can't see the little genie guy. On the other side of this wall is this little kind of like, I call him my genie, sitting there, you know, your wishes, my command. But this card is interesting because what I'm hearing is, you know, be careful what you wish for. This kind of little childlike figure is eating all the cookies and watching these two boys play. Seems like two little boys play. She's like observing them eating the cookies. And I'm not quite even sure why what I'm hearing is be careful what you wish for. But it's pretty rich, this card. It's speaking of, I feel like it's speaking of naivety around your desires. So if your true self was never really expressed or given the opportunity to be expressed or understood when you were a child, a lot of the things that you think that you want are not actually going to be the things that you want because you're coming at them from a naive perspective. And this is really speaking of consciousness itself and the levels of consciousness within society. This isn't a personal story, even though it's manifested through your personal story because you are part of this collective consciousness. So and I mean that in a very embodied way, as in a very real way, collective consciousness as it's really manifesting in an earthly embodied way in what's really around you. So it's speaking of this idea that there's lots of things that you think that you want, and this happens a lot within twin flame relationships, that are actually not going to serve you. Very much like a child wants to eat all the cookies, or a child wants to eat all the candy or whatever. There's nothing that's inherently wrong with it, with any of it. Like, the child eats all the cookies, you know, whatever. Maybe they get stomachache, maybe they're sick, blah, blah, blah. There's consequences to everything, but it's not really that important because we can never fall off our soul. It's always there. But the awareness around it is, if you think that eating all the cookies is going to make you happy, and you're completely focused on, I want to eat all the cookies, I want to eat all the cookies, and life's never letting you eat the cookies. If life did let you eat all the cookies, you'd realize that that wasn't really what you wanted. Or if life let you have all the toys, if you went to the toy store and you were given all the toys you ever wanted. So it's really, again, speaking of this kind of naivety. The ego, so to speak, is like a naive belief that this thing is going to make me happy. And it's just kind of inviting you to the reality that may not be true. And if you are not getting that thing, it will not, because it's all about timing. And this is why you have to live collectively. You have to understand collective energies. You can't just be focused on your individual self. That is not going to bring you happiness or joy or destiny. That is not the Christ consciousness lived. That is not twin flame consciousness lived. Okay, and that is really what it is. That's not divine feminine, divine masculine. It's if it isn't happening, it's not the right time. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong or shouldn't be, or it doesn't already exist, because it does. It's just that if life isn't manifesting it right now, it's because it's not going to do you any favors, because your joy is about the joy of all, truly. And if it isn't, find some other path to, like, literally just go to the store and buy the cookies and eat all the cookies instead, because this isn't your path. But I think we all know it is. So, soz. Anyway, love you lots. Have a great week. These were your messages for now, and I'll see you next now.